Let's start to prepare our application to persist our diary entries in the database. Instead of starting from zero, we will use the infrastructure provided by ASP.NET Identity in our application to link the diary entries to the application user and to store it in the SQL Server database. Our Cloud Diary Demo project, models, identity model. The first class is application user, derived from identity user. This way, we can add our own custom properties to store additional information that is linked to the user. And our application DbContext, used by Entity Framework to access our database, is also derived on identity, the identity DbContext, and based on our application user. If we have a look at the default constructor, you can see the name of the connection string passed to default connection. So to see the link to our actual database, we can have a look at the web config. Connection strings, here we are, default connection. And we can see here that it points to local DB SQL Server instance that is stored in our data directory, that is app_data, and called ASP Cloud Diary Demo, and so on. If we right click on App Data, open File in Explorer, we can see our database here. And back to Visual Studio, have a look with the Server Explorer. Data connections, default connection, and here are the tables. Let's add our own table to the database to store the diary entries. Models, open up diary entry. We will use our diary entry model class to create the new database table, and to do this we add some more properties to it. Let's add a globally unique identifier as our primary key. Date time is fine. We need some add more properties to our text. So we will put in the required attribute. Yeah, and import the missing namespaces, because it doesn't make sense to have a diary entry that has no text in it. Then we will tail our database. Next, we will add the maximum length for the text string, as we set up in the add DiaryEntry view model. Next step is to add the foreign key property to link our tables against the application user table. So let's have a look. Models, identity models. We have a look at identity user F12 to see what the primary key is. So they're using generics here, and we can see that the first argument, the first parameter is a string, st key. So we have a string. So we have a string key here. Great. Go back to diary entry. So we need to enter a string property called user ID. And let's also add a navigation property to the application user. That's application user, and we tell entity framework that our foreign key is user ID. Now that we have defined the model for a new table, we have to insert it into the DbContext. So we open up again Identity, Models, ApplicationDbContext. We add a DB set for the new table we want to create. That's public DB set of DiaryEntry or DiaryEntries get set. That's for the context. And now we go to the application user and enter a navigation property for our diary entries. Public virtual I collection of diary entry called, yes, we need to add a namespace, user diary entries get set. Wonderful. Let's commit our changes to source control. Add diary entry table to DbContext, for example. Nice. Let's make changes to the diary controller to add our entries in our new table. Solution Explorer. We go to Controllers, Diary Controller. Let's see. We want to change our HTTP post action method index. This is the place where we need to store our data in the database. Let's go. First of all, we need to create a new diary entry object. If you have a look here, what we are getting as a model is the add diary entry view model, and with only one property, the text we get from our form. So we need a new bar diary entry as new diary entry. Let's initialize the properties. For our ID, our primary key, we want to have a new globally unique identifier. No, it's a new, that's the one, comma. For the user ID, we can use the user property of the HTTP request, user identity, and get user ID. We need our set our timestamp, and of course our text, and the text is what we get from our model. Okay, this looks nice. Now we can use the database using var context as a new application DbContext. We can use the context DiaryEntries DB set add. We just add in the new diary entry object we just created above. And important, Save changes so that our data actually is being written to our database. We can delete this old code here. Save and test. Build the project. Debug. Start without debugging. Let's see. Login. Our demo user we created before. Oh, this doesn't look nice. So it says here the model backing the application DbContext has changed since the database was created. Consider using code first migration to update the database. Okay, we just changed the model, but without these code first migrations, entity framework can't change the database. So there's a mismatch because the model has changed, but the database is still the old one. So let's see how we fix that.